Today it's about unit testing, and I'm gonna make a little coding trip to Denmark. And finally, they announced test already on the screen here. It's a ferry, so we're gonna learn C++ testing with GTest suite, and we're gonna have a look at it right there now. It's C++ coding trip to Denmark. Yeah, today I'm on Fehmarn, and I will take over the ferry to Denmark. I will code on board and see how it works. And C++ has been invented in 1979 by Bjarne Stroustrup. He was from Denmark, and before I will get to Denmark now, I will need a ticket on this machine, and probably this machine will run on C++ because C++ has been heavily in use in embedded systems, and I guess this kind of embedded system. It's strange, it's in performance, and yeah, now I'm gonna build the ticket and then I will go over the ferry to Denmark. So after I got my ticket from the probably C++ run ticket machine, I will go over to Denmark. Actually, C++ has invented at Bell Labs in the US. Bjarne was also working as a professor at Texas University, but he was from Denmark. He was a Danish computer scientist born in 1950, so now the silver generation. And I will get some things downloaded I will need while I wait for the ferry to Denmark, and finally be back with some more details about C++. Actually, this ferry is replaced by a tunnel at the moment, which is built there. You see the build site. I don't know when it will be finished. It maybe take a few more years, but they're heavily busy in building it at the moment. And a little fun fact, on the other side you see the biggest liquor store in the world probably. All the Scandinavians come there to buy a lot of alcohol. They get all kinds of liquor, alcohol, beer, and alcohol is a lot cheaper in Germany. You can carry a lot over the border because it's European Union. So it's quite popular to go to the border shop to buy liquor for Scandinavian people. And there's my ferry car, the Princess Benedict from Rugbyhaven. Finally, they made a screen for my talk because it's all about test. This one out of order. So finally I downloaded some stuff and I got the best cacao from Denmark. It's chocolate milk and it's a really nice one. I decided for an exercise for today, and I decided for Emily Bach's tennis refactoring kata, which is in several versions of C++ available. It's a bit about refactoring, and we can look in. Also, I downloaded some stuff. I didn't have a screen recorder, so I downloaded new OBS Studio. And the GCC compiler is already installed. I decided to use Windows and Subsystem Linux, so I will use it under Ubuntu. And the GCC compiler as default comes with Ubuntu, because the Linux kernel is also based most parts in C++, and it's delivered with the system. The refactoring kata I'm going to do is from Emily Bach. She is the biggest collection of coding katas I know. And once I met her on the DevOps days, I don't know if it was in Stockholm or in Copenhagen, but she's also a consultant training teams. And if you want to do some coding katas, she's a big repository on GitHub where you can download them and just do an exercise, no matter if it's C++, Python, PHP, Java, any kind of. So, for those who don't know what a coding kata is, it's an exercise. Original kata is from karate, an exercise you do again and again and again to improve your skills, to be better. And coding exercises are little exercises you can do to improve your coding skills, featured on different things off. Some are more about testing, some are more about refactoring, some are about fulfilling little things, and there are always good exercises to improve your skills, to do something. If you want to learn a new language like me, C++, recommends this. And those coding katas also held sometimes in dojos. So I was hosting a lot of different coding dojos for Softwarekammer in Hamburg, where we, for example, met mornings at the Hauptbahnhof to code together. So you can not only do it alone, you can also do it with friends and learn from each other. So finally, I installed my screen recorder, and maybe I'm gonna add my camera to this view. When my setup is finished, I accidentally recorded some stuff in German, and then I had to pack in my stuff because the ferry almost arrived at Denmark. I went outside and take a look at the build site where they built the tunnel. Actually, they built a tunnel connection from Fehmarn Island to Lolland to Rødby, and it will be finished in a few years. I also had the chance to visit the tunnel center on the other side, where they tell everything about how the tunnel is being built. And actually, I think it's a nice thing that they built a tunnel. There's even an example of continuous delivery, a video I created from years ago, where it explains the difference between a ferry and a tunnel. The frequency of the ferry is pretty often. You don't have to plan your trip because there's almost a ferry going everywhere. When there's a tunnel, you can just drive through. It's almost like continuous delivery in IT DevOps.
This actually is the old station, and now trains already stopped operating. You have to take a bus to the next city, but before this was train station, and actually trains were able to get in the ferry. So I decided to drive to the next city, and we'll take a bus for this one because trains were not operating, and maybe there are funny nice days for coding.
Bjarne Stroustrup. Quick facts, who is he? Bjarne Stroustrup is a Danish computer scientist, best known as the creator of C++. Birth and education, born on December 30th, 1950, in Aarhus, Denmark. Earned a master's degree in mathematics and computer science from Aarhus University. Completed his PhD in computer science at Cambridge University, UK. Creation of C++ developed C++ in 1979 at Bell Labs, originally called C with classes. Released C++ in 1983, making it one of the most widely used programming languages. Achievements and influence. His book, The C++ Programming Language, is a standard reference for C++ developers. Awarded the Draper Prize in 2018 for his contributions to computing. Has worked as a professor at Texas A&M University and Columbia University. Current work continues to be involved in C++ standardization and promotes best practices in software development. Fun fact: he believes in writing simple, efficient, and maintainable code.
Finally, I found a very nice place to code, and it's time to get my laptop out. So finally, I'm here, and I got my Visual Studio Code here. I will use VS Code as development environment, and I'm gonna use Windows Subsystem Linux. If you use any other system, you're welcome to do it as well. Linux comes with a GCC compiler, and here I actually already opened the coding Kata, tennis refactoring Kata, and we got different versions of C++. And I'm also going to open terminal now with the WSL. Select new terminal, and here is PowerShell. I can move over to. I hope I can move over. I can have another one, which is using Ubuntu, which is installed on my system. And here's already my tennis refactoring Kata. So basically inside this window I got a complete Linux system. Maybe I'm gonna switch the font a bit. Let's check for preferences, settings. I like in the text editor a bigger font size, and that might be 18. Makes it easier for you to read. So finally, I'm back on my monitor again, and I'm connected via my microphone. Maybe you hear a bit background music, but I hope it's not so disturbing. So I open the file and let's see what's inside our C++, um, our C++ application inside our exercise. Here you see different things coming from VBNet, Swift, Scala, but we want to do C++ today. And there's two different versions of C++. C++ assert, C++ normal way, and C GTest, which is not C++ but usual C. Actually, the original name of C++ was C with classes, and later it was switched to C++. It has a wide. So actually now I'm gonna have a look inside this, and I use my terminal window and will basically walk inside this directory, cpp, and check what's here. And there's a README file. I can check the README. It's the tennis refactoring Kata, and maybe I find some information. If you do software projects, it's always good to have a README file, so somebody who's checking it out can find basic information what the program is doing it or what you do. Here I check it and I see different options. If working with an IDE with Google Test support such as CLine, the Google Test gives a better overview of issues. Downside is that Google Test has been obtained by Git clone during the CMake setup process. So this refactoring Kata comes with Google Test. Google Test is actually not something to test Google. It has been a suite for writing unit tests for C++, created by Google at some time, and that's why it called it Google Test or GTest at the moment. So it was a tool which Google internally used, and they gave it later outside as a public source library, and now you can use it. It's quite common to use GTest for testing C++ code. And here it offers you to use different IDEs. For example, Visual Studio 2022, and a way to do it in Windows, and maybe also CLion under Windows, which is other tool, or you can use CMake under GNU Linux. That's the way we want to do it, and I will just try out the way they described here with using CMake. How to build the software. I will just follow what they typed inside the README and see what it does. I will run the command. I made a new directory which is called build, and now I run a directory of the level 1 upper after I'm in build, and I run the CMake command to actually build the code, to compile the code. And it tells me I don't have CMake installed. That's why I need internet connection to get it on my Ubuntu running. Let's open the connection. I have to check how long I can do for today. I got battery left 52%, and I got an extra battery in my backpack, which is quite a useful thing. So after I got my connection here, I can install CMake. If you want to set up your build system in another way, you can also use Docker containers, which come with all necessary compilers. Sometimes it's easier, especially if you've got a big project with a lot of different setups. I recommend the Docker way. At this point, it's okay for us to do it locally on the WSL system. So now I can run the CMake command again, and here it says it's using version 13 of the compiler, and complaining about stuff. And I am not sure how to solve it. I could ask ChatGPT or Google. I will ask ChatGPT how to do it on a Linux system. And the recommendation is basically install the compiler. So I will do another sudo g++. Has not been installed yet. So I don't only need CMake, I also need the C++ compiler. Now I'm going to check again. Okay, it's a warning about timestamp. I'm not sure, but it seems it has been done successful, and I'm going to run the CMake. One thing which is different when you do C++ testing, which is confusing if you're used to build unit tests in maybe PHP or I think even JUnit, you need to compile your code actually before you can run the test. So you need to run a build command. And finally, after that, the test command is going to be available. That's something different compared to other testing systems. But if you get used to it, it's not that big problem. And here you can see the build running, which is actually using the G++ compiler I installed before now in CMake. From technical point, CMake is creating still make files in the background and then running it through through the CMake command. And luckily I got some coffee, so for the waiting time I have something nice to do. It's 53% running now. I hope my laptop is going to be last for the time. One thing I can recommend is a power bank. This one gives me actually 10 ampere hours. And now it's ready. I can run the C test build. And I see all the tests are passing, and we'll look in what files are generated afterwards. Okay, 100% test passes, 0 tests failed of 198, so we can be lucky. This coding Kata comes with a lot of tests. And finally, let us look inside the code, what comes with it. We got different files. We have like C classes, and I'm watching them first time now. At the beginning of C classes, you have like an include, and this is one seems like including a basic library called string, which we are using. And you have here a constant defined, which seems like you can actually, in C++, you can do procedural, and you can also do object-oriented code. And rather, I'm trying to finding out what this is. This seems like a basic, very basic implementation of the tennis game. Actually, it's a counter for a tennis game, this kata, and it's used with a lot of if statements. It seems like one procedure which is being called. Let's check the test for this one. And here it seems there's a test class. We have include to a string function and also to GTest. GTest is a test suite from Google. It's comparable with JUnit, PHP unit, or maybe any testing framework in JavaScript. So this one is testing the class. I'm not sure what it's doing here. There's like tennis score. cons, which is having 1 and second score. And afterwards, it's calling it with some results. So we have a test, tennis test class, and this is a basic example or basic expected result, I would call it. And here we use an expect command, which might expect some different result. So let's check the test now. There's a lot of written tests. If I scroll all along, then it might be different point settings and expecting the concrete real result, 140 lines of code. And let's check what the other classes are. This one seems to be same principle with other methods. This one seems to solve it another way. Basically, it seems that we have 7 different implementations of the same algorithm, which is basically just converting game results and points, player 1 score and player 2 score, to a written tennis result. And actually, I never know tennis that good. I just know this exercise. I did it before in PHP or Java, and that's everything I know about tennis. So tennis might seem dependent on this result. So I checked about the coding format in C++, and actually this repository comes with a C-lang file. And C-lang is an automatic code formatter for C++. And I'm going to check an extension for my Visual Studio Code now. And I go for this with 1.9 million to 1.8 million. And actually, with 1.8 million people using a plugin in Visual Studio Code, you can see how many people in the world are coding actually C++. 1.8 million, that's almost 1/3 of the population of Denmark, and a lot of people worldwide. So, a lot of people using C++. So I'm going to format my C++ formatter now, and I will use the C-lang format. And I'm not sure if it's running. Command is not available. Please check your C-lang configuration. I need to configure it. And actually, I might need to install it locally on inside my console. The usage of C-lang seems a bit complicated. I need to configure it and I need to install it before. Actually, the extension does not bring it itself. It can use LVM under Windows, and I'm not sure how it's using via Linux Subsystem, but I'm going to try this one. Installing it, and now at least I can use manual run of command. As soon as it's installed, I will just try it. And it should show issues if I run it manually. Actually, one thing I always have if I use a new language, the problem is I don't know all the tools. You're always not completely at home and need to search for stuff, how it's done. Now I'm searching for the C-lang stuff, and I can run it on my console. I will just try it with a command now. I just copied it. Style file. I hope this is enough, and I will just run it file I choose, which could be my tennis 1cc. And this one gives me out some information about what I should improve with this code. Code should be C-lang formatted, C-lang fault violations. not completely helpful if it doesn't tell me what's wrong. It's just putting on the note what is wrong, and I can see I could see what it does if I run it. Lang format. Now it's moving the correct code back, and I don't know if the file is automatically changed. It's not, but it is installing a lot of manual stuff. Making it easier. And here you see what has been corrected by the code format. This one went in one line, so it's easier readable. And also it were some at this one there was some so code format is the first thing you can do at refactoring, and actually this CLang makes it pretty easy to reformat your code. You can use it to guide everything to the coding guidelines. And here actually it looks for mostly some spaces between operators, and also for better lining, so multiple things in one line was not getting it too long, makes it easier to read. If you look at the code, this has been the code before, and here it's more clear, like introducing between any operator or comparator a space, so it's easier readable, moving things in separate lines at some points, or in same line at other points. For example, this one is different lines, but we've seen same line before. Here was a case statement, they moved it to the same line. So it's easier readable, it's a simple thing of refactoring, and actually having a coding standard is pretty important if you work especially with multiple people, to avoid discussions if the code is good or not. Finally, I was able to get some power, and I almost lost my USB connector for my microphone, but I was able to find it back thanks to the writers. Let's have a check on what we did so far. I was getting installed Visual Studio Code, which I had before, downloaded the refactoring Kata, and checked for my C environment. What I do use is the G++ compiler. I also installed CLang, which is code formatting tool for C++, and it's using the GTest. I run the GTest before. I made a build directory, run CMake command, and then I run the CTest command. And now I used CLang to refactor actually my code, compilant to the coding standard, and it automatically did all the stuff. What I can do now is try if the tests are still running, because when the tests are still running, everything is fine. I've tested. I did not destroy anything, and that's a good thing. So now it's time to run the tests. So we did a refactoring of the code compliant to the coding guidelines with CLang, and now I'm gonna see if the tests are still running. For that, I'm gonna rerun my tests. I will do it via using. I need to go to my bit directory again. Run the CMake command, CMake dot, still got the warning I do not understand, and then I will be able to run the test. About this one, it takes always time to build. I switched from coffee to beer. I got this little, it's actually an Easter beer in Denmark, and I decided to try it. And now it's still running.
Let's see a bit faster how the tests were passing.
So, all tests passed, tests are still running. Now I would be able to check it in. Maybe I just create a fork of this repository for my refactorings. So, time to create a fork. I will fork the Kata project from Emily Bachen now. That means I create another version of this repository. So I can check in my own changes. I can have full Git support, which is useful if I do refactorings. And the other advantage is I will be able to use the GitHub pipelines. So GitHub Actions, it's called. So I can also automate my testing stuff, which is pretty interesting for me. I like to do that stuff, and maybe I'm going to do another video. I will run the fork command, and then I have to check how I introduce it into my GitLab. Actually, I have to manipulate some files. So this refactoring Kata, and I will call it Emily Bache Tennis Refactoring Kata. So everyone knows what it is. Copy it to my main. Maybe GitHub will tell me what to do in my repository. I will need to set another upstream. It will not tell me forked from GitLab refactoring Kata, but I got my thing connected, and I think GitHub is only working with SSH tokens. So finally, I managed to switch the branch, but I didn't bring my changes as I already committed to the Emily branch. And now I will simply do all the stuff again. So the command I used was, I have to look up. I did use CMake build to do it. And actually, I also used C-lang format. And the command to fix it is not -n, which gives notification. Can check for additional commands soon. -I already corrects the file, and that's what I did. The only change I did so far. Of course, in the right directory. And now the format has been changed to the correct coding style defined in the C-lang format file. Let's look a bit on it. It's based on style Google, so maybe it's learning everything from Google, and it has some wrapping information, some ident-wise column limit, so 120 charts column limit, and namespace indentation. If includes should be sorted. Break before braces is custom. So some definition. It's another domain-specific language, we could call it, and seems to be a bit JSON style, maybe own format. I refactored the file now by using it. Let's check for the options we can use. We already use learned -n is just show the errors. There should be not anymore. -a is change it, and this doesn't seem to be a help file. Now I see the help. Let's see which one they are. There's, of course, verbose. Option N is alias for dry run, so it does not change anything. I in place, edit, so directly adds it. And you can find some specific formats. You can dump the config. I will try this one. Here we see it. So basically, useful tool to refactor everything. Now I can test if the test is still running. I have to go into my build directory. I have to run CMake ... The other one was CMake build. I found them in the README here. And then I can run CTest. So, things running. Music here is still really strange, but I like the decoration. So, my tests are running through, and let's see if they successfully passed everything. This is a state I will keep for now, and yeah, looking forward to commit everything and check Git status. Refactored using C lang. Now I use git push. Now I check if everything is pushed actually. And for that one, I need to check my GitHub repository. So let's see if my changes are pushed. And I see several problems with OBS, with this window mode. But here I can see for code changes, main branch. Branches, let me check. I already saw it 1 minute ago. I see this commit. I see it here, this branch is one ahead of, and I see my commit over here. John Behrens refactored file, and here I can see all changes, which is pretty useful. I see it has been made a bit smaller at some point and easier readable, which is quite sufficient. So I decided for a little break and get a little burger inside this cafe. And actually, one thing you need to consider if you develop in a language and not have set up your development environment, you need extra time. Like now, I was setting up my GitHub SSH key, connecting everything. That takes take me about like 20-30 minutes. If you don't code that frequently, sometimes it's easier to use online IDE. You save a lot of time. I did it before using, for example, Gitpod, but there are other alternatives as well. The disadvantage of online IDE is, like I'm now on a trip, I will not have connection on the ferry and it will not work. For this one, my local one is better. And still, if you have longer time where you develop on the same project, it's easier to have everything installed locally, also in case of performance. So what I did now is I created a fork of the GitHub repository from Emily Bache, and it's on my GitHub account now, so I can check in stuff, and you will also be able to download the stuff. I'm going to put a link under this video so you can see what I refactored, and later we spend more time in refactoring. For now, I did just a little step. I compiled it myself using the G++ GCC compiler, and I also used CLang to auto refactor it and make it compliant with the coding standards defined in CLang. So this one is already checked in, and we're going to push that to GitHub inside next step. So now I'm going to have my burger, and we're going to see you, and then we will continue on the trip back to Germany about refactoring the tennis game. coding at Cafe Vittoria, very nice place, but now I have to head back to the chain. So I'm just missed the Deutschland. I have to wait for the next ferry now. Gateway already removed. So, sogar Power Supply connected. Und jetzt ist es noch Zeit für ein bisschen Coding. Und während mein Windows-Rechner startet, gibt es dazu ein kleines Signing alkoholfrei. Das ist cool. So, on board and welcome back to my refactoring Kata. And I had to restart my computer. That's why my WSL is closed. I will need to create a new window, which is easy to do. And I decided to set up the second. Now my WSL is not starting, always waiting time. Oh, there it is. I'm already in the right directory. And now I'm gonna refactor the second class, tennis.cc. And actually I can do self-refactoring, but I promise you I would like to try ChatGPT. So I will gonna check if I will have a connection. Why internet connection? I guess not. And there would be a better way using GitHub Copilot, which is also using the ChatGPT language model, but I don't want to configure anymore on my trip. I cannot configure everything. So this I did just copy and paste it over and waiting for the reply and hope the reply is going to come as long as I got internet connection. And here I use copy and paste, and then I'm going to run it with all my tests and also compare and see what he did. If you look at the C++ code, you see many other languages learned a lot from C++. It almost looks like Java. And also if you look at PHP, you finally will notice that PHP was highly inspired by C++, except they don't have typing, they don't have that memory management and all that stuff. But the syntax looks pretty the same. The brackets are typical C++ stuff. The classes, the class initiators, the keyword are typical C++ stuff. And the public modifiers have been seen in other programming languages as well. So now I got my code, and now try if my code will run inside. So now I switched over to display capture. I had too much problems with the OBS stuff, and this makes you able to see my ChatGPT. I can copy the code here, and everything I do now is place into Visual Studio Code, remove all old code, and add the new one. Here I see a line which is marked at the last line, not necessary anymore. I did not check what he was changing. I asked him to do. My original prompt in ChatGPT was if he could do it more object-oriented. If you see here, refactor this code, more object-oriented version of C++ class. And he introduced another more object-oriented way. I'm going to check it. I find it easier to understand. We have a class called tennis game. Player 1 score, player 2 score. And with this class, you have a method called tennis game. And here you have a simple if statement, which is might not the best method, but I will not have time to optimize the code that hard. And here we have the main function called tennis game, which is called, I'm not sure if it will fit to the test. For that one, I should diff it one. Should more diff it, split. I can see the commits right here. Did I save this? Yes. And it's, I'm gonna save this one and compare it with a Git version. I'm not sure why my performance is so fucked up. Here I see the changes. I can compare old code and refactored code. Before there was a const calling a tennis score action, and I think the main method was not there. Return score, and we have here the return 0, and otherwise we have an output. That makes a problem. It will not be able to run with the test, the ChatGPT generated code, I think, but I'm just gonna try out.
And we see a lot of tests failing as ChatGPT was not intelligent enough and made the interface, actually changed the interface. So I will ask him to make it testable by this testing class. It's actually now, I didn't plan to do about prompt engineering. It's more a matter of time. So adapt the class being called by this test. Let's see what he did. Now it looks pretty the same. Main tennis game. But he did not understand what it means. Provide interface as the old function so it can be called by the call of tennis score. Here we have the implemented function. We're going to check this out. So this one has been added and there's been the main output. I will check for the class again. It was tennis2cc. Here it wasn't there, and the new function has here the procedural call of this tennis score function implemented. And I'm gonna check what happens if I gonna rebuild my app now. Actually, you can combine the build commands. CMake dot and CMake minus build CTest. Actually, using two end signs is a way to execute multiple commands after each other with Linux command shell. And this one makes it a bit easier to execute. You don't need to execute each command and wait for it. It will just combine. Execute all of them one after another together. And now my tests are running again. So let us see what actually our ChatGPT did for us and what has been added now. So finally, we had a class which was looking very untidy. Look here, you had like a const initiated. I think this is the way how you initialize the procedural function in see So constant one, the return value is a string, I guess. And I don't know what std means. Maybe he explains it to me. So he has the present one. He has actually kind of combination of if statements which are which are aligned in a very strange way, and it's hard to understand the code. Actually, as human, it's hard to understand it. You can refactor it step by step. In this case, I used AI to do it. I used ChatGPT, and what ChatGPT does breaks the software down to a simple case statement. So it's actually more looking like the first example, and put everything into a class. So this class has now a function to get the score name, which is also a pretty good naming. I'm pretty surprised by the solution. Maybe it has just been Googled. Get a score name, which is pretty descriptive name, and defining different names for score like love 15, 30, 40. Then we get the tennis name. We have a get store function, which is actually giving out score all if both have the same, and otherwise the score name of player 1 and player 2, and giving out who has the advantage. So a lot easier readable. And here is the trick what we do. I think actually this might not be needed in putting out stuff, but I'm not completely sure yet. We have a pattern which is actually adapting the new OOP class to the old interface, this tennis score method. So it could be called by the test. You actually don't see that tennis tennis score is not existing anymore. This is also a refactoring pattern, like you move stuff to an external class and stay with the same interface. So from outside, it still looks like the same code, but inside it's refactored to a modern, better structure. Our tests are still running, so we know everything is okay. And is it already late now? It's 1:30. I decide that I will commit this one. I check git status, and it says me one change: git add tennis 2 it commit. I would say tennis 2 refactored by chat GPT. And now I will do git push. If I need to set him origin main. I need to check some stuff out, like improve my Git knowledge again. If I do a software cutter again, the same one, I now here's I might not have usage rights. I might to need the SSH key again.
So finally, I created another Bluetooth screen, and this might. I'm not sure which parts of Windows are actually C++. I have to check the background, but this one is a stop of memory management, which could rely either to bad memory management in the software or some hardware defect. I'm gonna check more about it, just got the QR code. I guess this is one of the problems where you are really happy when it does not happen on a trip to maybe a conference with next to your speech you want to do until you prepared everything of your laptop. Because what happened, I don't know, my laptop discovered a memory problem and now forgot his BitLocker connection and the hard drive is encrypted and I need my recovery key, something I never did before. Well, maybe you're going to tell me better use a Mac or better use a Linux system, maybe. And now I will be able to fix it at home, but I will not be able to code anymore on the ferry. So finally, the last exercises of this trip, they went through. What we did so far is installed C++ compiler, used WSL to do it. I configured my laptop completely new to record stuff with OBS. And also we're able to use CLang to refactor one. Actually, it was not a class, but a C++ function to follow the coding standards. And now I'm not able to continue, but we learned a lot about C++, which compiler you need, how to install it, and where it's from. And C++ is still one of the most important programming languages. So it's worth learning it, especially if you do performance-related operations, if you are in hardware closed development drivers, if you are develop games or maybe applications be running near close to resources, could also be some AI driver stuff. If you work in an embedded C++, it is quite common, and also maybe for high performance communication and banking applications. We know C++ has been developed at AT&T Bell Labs, like the C language. It was first named C with classes, and now it's almost older than me, and I'm not that young anymore. So C++, quite common language and worth to learn it.
This was my coding trip to Denmark. And actually, when I came home, my system was running again. I also recorded a video of it, but that was in German accidentally. So, it was a nice, interesting trip. A lot of configuration work when you try to develop with something you don't do every day. It's always the case. It's also an experiment with a new format, the vlog format, and also screencasting of programming combined. I hope you like it. Please let me know in the comments your experience with C++, with coding katas, and what you expect in my next videos. Also, don't miss to subscribe to the channel to support me.